Prosperity in Black America. What will this require? Is Black business prospering? Are we reaching women and minority-owned businesses? How do we achieve earning parity for wealth for our families? Do our children really have access to education? Will our families have choices for our children? Prison pipelines, mass incarceration, tearing our families apart. A healthcare system not accessible to the masses. The disproportionate termination of Black women from corporate America. When will we actually begin to address what's really at play? How do Black people gain more power to help make these changes? This requires a lot of political will and courage. I'm that provocateur of change. I am Cindi Bright. Welcome to HeartBeat.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to HeartBeat, a 7 a.m. edition of HeartBeat this morning, something we're not used to doing. Wanted to come live and talk. Both Aaron Jones and I are on this morning. We want to talk about this past week, the Democratic Convention. So many thoughts about it. I don't want to steal the show about it. I'm going to bring Aaron right in with me because we just have a lot of excitement inside of us about and want to be able to talk about our thoughts, and hopefully you too can share your thoughts about what you think about the past week. So let me bring in Aaron. Good morning, Aaron. Thank you for being on so early. You got your coffee too with you this morning?
I do. I'm ready to go.
Woo, what a week. What a week.
Yes.
What a week. God, what were some of your thoughts about this past week? Like, I just can't wait to talk with you about it.
Well, I just want to say, watching the prelude to your show today and thinking about who I was 15 years ago in my pantsuits. I was watching you walk down the street in your pantsuit and thinking about me. And I used to have hair like yours too, almost the same cut, which is just like Kamala's cut. And it just makes me think so much. I mean, you and I are her in so many ways. She is us. And I think that is, for me, the biggest takeaway watching her close last night, but then opening this morning by watching you walk down the street. Like, for the first time in our lives, we get to see us on that stage. And that is like super, like, I'm really emotional about that.
It is kind of crazy. Someone had texted me last night because I even have a similar haircut to her. You know,
yeah, I did too.
And
my hair was, yes.
Yeah, and the length and yes. To your point, like, we've all, to be able to see ourselves. Like, I will say, you know, I was invited to several events last night to go watch her accept the nomination, and I couldn't go because I didn't feel like I could. I needed to be in a different environment to be able to feel what I felt to watch her. To your point, to see myself, like, I was emotional watching her last night. Just, did you see that picture? I should have uploaded it to share. I saw it on Attorney Ben Crump's page this morning, but somebody took a picture of the vice president from the angle of a small child looking up at her, and she had braids in her hair, and it was the visual of, to your point, we are older. I'm older than you. We get to see ourselves in her. Imagine what that's like for a child to be able to see somebody like that, to aspire to become. Yeah, it's powerful, isn't it?
And I just want to say too, that it's bigger than just seeing somebody who looks like her, because I've had a lot of people say, either to me or just on social media, you're just voting for her because she's a Black woman. No, actually, what I know, and I know that you know this too, because you wrote a whole book about it. I know a fraction of what she's been through to get to that point. And so I don't vote for her because she looks like me. I vote for her because I know what she's gotten through to get to that point, and she still has joy, and she still has her head held high, and she still has her humanity. And that, to me, speaks volumes. And people who are not Black women, who've not been in executive roles, may not understand what that means to us, but we know
Mhm.
what it means to sit in a boardroom when you're the only one. We
Mhm.
know what it means to run as a Black woman for office and the
Mhm.
ways that people talk to you. And she's chosen to do that 4 times. She's chosen to run for different
Yep,
offices 4 times. And she still can stand up there with a smile and she can still
yep.
stand up with confidence. And so I have told people for the last 3 weeks, I'm not choosing her because she looks like me. I'm choosing her because I know what she's been through to get to where she is, and she still has her humanity intact.
And who else, triggers those same thoughts for me? You know, I hear so many people say negative things about Hillary Clinton, but I have so much respect for her
Me too.
to given what you just described, because
Yeah.
we know what it takes to be a woman and still have your dignity and intact after you've been beat up through the ringer, still listening to criticisms about the decision you made to stay with your husband, still. So I say, like for Vice President Harris, I vote for her for the reasons you described and because she looks like me, because to your point, have sat at top ranks in corporations, and that's not easy to do either, to your point,
Nope.
right? Like being the only one, what you have to endure. Michelle Obama talked about, remember when she said, unfortunately, we know what comes next, right?
Yeah.
So the playbook of the Black woman, right? We know the playbook. And so these next, what is it, 74 days that we have now,
Yeah.
left to not take for granted and to be able to get her over the finish line is significant. It's so significant for all of us.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
she did a great job of it's emphasizing the point you just made. She did a great job of connecting to all Americans. And so we
Yes.
have to, I would say to white America, just get comfortable with the fact that how much this means to us as Black women, and it includes you too. And so
Mm.
I thought she did a stellar job, as did Governor Walz, with connecting with real people and talking about, like, didn't you even feel like the words and how they talked about what their agenda is sounded different than a traditional political agenda for, 'cause we always hear all of them talk about affordable housing and kind of the same stuff, but didn't it seem different this time with them?
It was, you know, it was funny because my husband has a master's degree in political science. So he and I, he had football practice yesterday. So he was not home when I got to listen to the DNC yesterday. And he was not home the night before either. But the night before that, the second night of the DNC, he had on his folks and he was listening to political pundits talk. And one of the things that they were critiquing was there's not enough policy, not enough policy. But here's the deal, the average American doesn't care about all the political speak. They don't care about the political speak. They want to know, especially right now, they want to know, are you human? And I
Mhm.
think the thing that I love most about the DNC this year, and I have never listened to a full, like I listened to more DNC speeches this year than I've ever listened to in my life. But I would say what I loved about this one is it was grounded in humanity.
Mhm.
And because of the work that I do, I also listen to the RNC as many episodes as I could hear, as I could tolerate of that. And the feel of the two were so dramatically different. And I
Mhm.
feel like the DNC organizers were really intentional about creating, even with the DJ, which to
Mhm.
some people may have felt ridiculous, but for me, it was like, no, we want to actually feel like we're alive and energized and that we're people of the people. And so even the roll call and having a DJ and having music and having people just tell stories and have different famous people from each state announce their, but was just, it was so humanizing in a moment. This last year has felt so dehumanizing in so many ways. And so for me, the humanization, so maybe there wasn't as much policy as people wanted. Man, I can take that tomorrow. I can take that next week. Like,
Yeah.
I'm really not worried about that because I know if you are really human and humane, you're going to come out with policy that I can support,
Yeah.
and we can work on that later. But I loved just the feel of we are community, we're family, white and black and biracial and Latino. And I love the island, the folks that from the protected spaces that got their place on stage too. And just we are everything. And I think that was such a beautiful tenor for the event.
I agree. I think the political commentary about policy was just because they had nothing else to pick on. She literally, it's been a 30-something day process,
Thank you.
and
Thank you.
any chief executive of every company I've ever worked for, and I've worked for some big companies, it's a minimum of 90 days
Yes.
for them to get their feet underneath them to understand some of the things that they want to work on and focus. And she was also managing being respectful to President
Her
Biden,
predecessor. Yeah.
right? And so, just looking for shit to pick apart on her, again,
Yeah.
we know what's next, but, number 45 was tweeting last night. Apparently, I just caught it this morning about while she was talking about, well, she's had 3.5 years to do. No, the role of a vice president is different than the role of a president. And, just not being able to separate that or ever say anything good about somebody just drives me nuts. And I just feel excited now that we can start to focus on some positive things that she's going to bring to the table, and her practical way that she looks at issues. I texted y'all last night and I was saying to you, the one thing that really stuck with me that I'm like, oh, I know what she means by that, was that whole opportunity economy, right? Like,
Yes.
she's going to fix some stuff. She's going to fix some stuff that we haven't historically been dealing with. And so the fact that, I think you've heard me use the 3 S's before in some of my talks that I give about, in order to be an effective leader, there are 3 S's I feel strongly about. Each leader must have suffered, they must have sweat, and they must have sacrificed. And from my perspective, those 3 categories are what builds character in people and prepare them for leadership. And she has been through all of that. And and I think that that's her ability. She's able to connect. Her story is our story, Erin. Just listen to her mom and, all the things that you come out of you're an adopted person. So you've come out of a different home structure, if you will, than traditional. I come out of a biracial. You were raised by 2 white people. Is that correct? I remember.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I come out of a white mother raised in the hood, and just all the things that come with that too, right? And so our ability to understand impact of how systems and people and healthcare and all the things that are not reaching us, right? My intro, the things that it's not reaching us. I think we are going to have a shot at it to reach us now. I really do.
Right. No, I absolutely agree. And it just was so, I walked away, and I said this in a number of TikTok videos that I posted, but I don't believe the Democratic Party is our salvation. And I feel so hope-filled that this ticket right now is our future. And I think that's the other thing. And this is kind of ironic that, I was adopted by people from northern Minnesota. So Mr. Walls is, my mom and I were texting all together last night, and Tim Walls is the best of us there. And it is just beautiful. In so many ways, my husband's a head football coach. So in so many ways, the Harris Walls ticket is us, like literally in my own house, it's us. And I think as a lifetime educator, I'm walking into year 34. I got to open a school 2 days ago in Walla Walla. For me, how people treat children how they
Mhm.
talk about children, how they engage with children. There are skills that you can learn from teaching that just you can't learn anywhere else. And just watching the way that he adapts and adjusts how he engages people, and just the way that both of them engage children. I love watching Kamala with little girls. She is
Mhm.
so intentional about engaging the little girls that she sees in her world, and walking up and holding their faces between
Mhm.
her hands. And I think the way that people talk about their own children and about other people's children tells you a ton. And I think to that point, Governor Walz's speech and how his family responded to him, I literally cried all day yesterday,
Mhm.
off and on. I cried all day. My son is on the autism spectrum. My other son is dysgraphic and ADD and OCD, and both of them have done versions of what Gus Walz did. When I ran for office, my oldest son was my biggest fan. And I can think of all the times when he cried. He was so proud of me. And, for people to tear that down, like, oh,
Mhm.
you wish you had a child who thought about you that way. You wish you had a child. And that
Mhm.
was just so I think the two of them together are literally the best of us as a country.
Mhm. I so agree with that. I felt like for the first time too, I will speak for myself. I've been openly critical of the Democratic Party
Mhm.
a lot because it has felt that you had to be 80 years old and
Mhm.
in order to progress anywhere. And it has felt to me many times that we as what I call regular, middle class people are never being heard.
Mhm.
It felt this time like we've seen their bench now, the people that are coming up. That
Yes.
is not something we have historically seen.
No.
Like it kind of lit a fire in me too about because I started thinking about my own legislative district and we have significant gaps in terms of talent and bringing people. There's just too many gatekeepers in this whole
Mm.
process. But I think we have an opportunity now to start to try to drive some of those, bring more of that bench forward, bring more of, vice president is my generation, the generation behind me, which would be I guess, the 40 and 50-year-olds.
That's
Uh,
me.
you, um, it's time to get them developed and positioned and ready and all of the sort of things that we need to do to help them be able to and hopefully the Dems have learned their lesson um, about holding people back because look at what it created at the 11th hour
Yes.
with the potential of having that fool repeat his presidency. Although we're not out of the woods yet. I mean, I don't want to,
No.
yeah, like I don't want to
Right.
create the impression that, I was ready to party with Hillary when literally I was driving to the Westin in Seattle when I found out Trump had won. So we can't, take any of that for granted for sure.
Right. But I do want to speak to that though. I think not just the Dems, I think my parents' generation, my parents are both 80, did not pass the baton in a lot of ways. So not just politically, just that generation has really held on tightly to things. And I can think about the several boards that I sat on with leaders who are now in their 80s, but at the time were in their 60s, who just did not want to pass the baton. And so I stepped away from those boards because it's like,
Mhm.
if I can't bring my generation's perspective, I don't want to sit here. But then to watch, I think what was really hopeful was to see that the bench is so deep in the Democratic Party because we've not gotten to see. I mean, I knew who Gavin Newsom was. I had been following Tim Walz for a long time just because I'm from Minnesota originally. Um, I think about Wes Moore. I think about Josh Shapiro. I mean, there's some. Pete Buttigieg was my eighth grade student. I don't know if you knew that, but
You
he was
said
my
it.
eighth
Yeah.
grade student. So I could see those people, but it felt like the Democratic Party wasn't seeing those people in a powerful way
Mhm.
until this last minute. And I think one of the most hopeful things about watching the DNC was seeing how deep the bench is. Jasmine Crockett. I mean, they're just
Mhm.
all of these people that have not gotten the time on stage that I think. I guess I'm glad that they're now getting the time on stage. So I
Mhm.
don't want to complain about what didn't happen before, but I think we just always need to be encouraged to always be passing the baton and always be raising up the next generation and be. I mean, I think about that. I am raising up students right now that I want to take on the mantle, and I have students working for me right now that I want them to learn how I do what I do. I want them to do it better. And I think we need to have that attitude of constantly being willing to let things go and not hold on until the last minute, until we're literally dying before we're willing to release to the next generation.
Well, the 3 S's that I mentioned, the one sacrifice, is what President Biden did. He sacrificed, his own ambition and, um, we didn't see the numbers or the polls, whether he could win or not. So I don't know if the sacrifice was forced or not, or whether,
Right.
um, but my point that I want to raise about that is that let's hope that the Dems didn't just do that, didn't just display Jasmine Crockett and AOC and all those folks
Yeah.
that Pelosi has rejected in the past
Hmm.
in her own way. Let's hope it wasn't just a display to grab people and then have no intention of moving them along. And so, saying that different, it would be nice to get um, a bench that's built where you have deliberate and intentional succession. So you look at, and inside a business, we did this, and you had a 2 to 4 year window, and you had to move people around and get them into other roles to give them the breath that they need to get to
Right.
move them up. And so let's hope that it's not a 20-year cycle before AOC or Jasmine Crockett can uh, actually hold some more senior leadership positions and influence a lot of these outcomes so that things actually do swiftly change,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I
Mhm.
think, what I appreciate, you mentioned AOC, and I didn't get to hear her whole speech, but I got to hear most of it. And I've just heard a lot of commentary about her. I've been watching her too since she joined. I mean, for years, I've been watching her. I follow her on Instagram, and she represents a much further left than a lot of Democrats. But what I really appreciate, she gave one of the best speeches from what I could tell. What I really appreciate about the Dems bringing her on stage and giving her a powerful platform is one of the things I've seen in the last few weeks is the left really pushing against Kamala and really pushing against how things have been moving. And I think it was really strategic to bring somebody like AOC into the center to say,
Mhm.
we see you too. And we want to make sure we're taking from moderate to left, that we're giving a platform to people across the spectrum. I really appreciated that. I appreciated also, and I've been saying this about the Dems at the national level for a long time, that I think we've lost a lot of poor white people to the Republican Party because the Democrats have not had a clear message to rural white America.
Mhm.
And so I think the Republicans have snatched that and have made promises to rural white America that they have no intention of keeping. But I think the Dems have lost them because they haven't had intentional messaging to rural white America.
Mm.
And so I think another thing that's refreshing, even about somebody like Governor Walz, is being really intentional about speaking to you are us too. And we can't
Mhm.
leave you behind. And we can't spend so much time talking about urban centers. There are all these people in rural America that are also really poor, that also don't have opportunity. And Kamala spoke to that in her speech too, just
Mhm.
that she wants to make sure that people in rural communities have access to jobs and to
Mhm.
thriving. And I think that is needed right now to pull those folks from who have
Mhm.
voted for Trump, but he's not giving them anything other than anger.
Right. I wanna talk to both what you just mentioned around AOC and a bit left, and then I want to also talk about Adam Kinzinger's when so speaking of reaching an audience that would not ordinarily be Dems, I want to talk about that,
Hmm.
but I want to do just a quick commercial break and then we'll jump into that.
State Senator Twana Nobles has earned the trust of our community. As a mother with kids in public schools, she understands what working families need to thrive. That means increasing access to financial aid, expanding the working family's tax credit so we can afford to live in our communities, and ensuring Washingtonians continue to have access to abortion. Re-elect Twana Nobles, trusted by the community, the champion we need. Paid for by Friends of Twana Nobles.
Looking forward to seeing her get reelected again. Yeah, I wanted to talk more about, the AOC, because I was actually intentionally listening to, I hear many people describe her as further left. Describe how you see that with her, because I don't describe how you see her to be more left than other people.
So I think, first of all, I think she speaks out more than women typically do, and folks of color do. So in that way, I think there's a boldness from her that maybe is not, it's perceived as more left because
Yeah.
when you're moderate, right, you know to keep your place. And she's never kept her place. She's taken up space, which is kind of why I follow her, because I just appreciate, I don't always agree with what she says, but I appreciate that she's willing to take up space, that she's willing to speak her mind. I really appreciate that about her. I think she gets a lot of critique for not having come up through the right channels. And I'm
See,
somebody
and that's why I'm asking this question, because
Yeah.
that is 100% what I see as well, because I don't see her policy ideas
No.
as left. Like healthcare, like these are the basic things that unions, those are not so far left. She goes after what the right has already access to.
Mhm.
But I think that's right. And I ask it because I challenge, people broader to really think about the labels, including the Democrats, they're afraid of too left, which is basically too vocal, right? So,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
that's your point, is that it's about speaking truth. And that's how Jasmine Crockett is too, right?
Mhm.
Like they speak
Mhm.
the truth. So they are a very different generation of,
Yes.
leaders, women that are unwilling to just sit and be quiet
Mhm.
while the guys do blah, 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 blah. So I've had the conversation about AOC a lot because people attach the term extreme. I'm like, what is it that she's
She's
saying?
not extreme.
I don't think so either. So I'm like, what is that?
She just takes up space. And I
She
think
takes up
too, I
space.
mean,
Yeah.
much like you and I, she came into this work not on the typical channels. So
Right.
she didn't come through the Democratic Party in the way that
Right.
others did. And I think that's why I followed her, because I feel like, oh yeah, I didn't either. I didn't come through the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And so I just value her courage and how she shows up.
Yeah. I think these are characteristics of people that should qualify people even further, the people who are coming the non-traditional routes. And the non-traditional route has created these gatekeepers in the traditional system that says, oh, you're not ready yet, or oh, you need to wait your turn. All the BS that goes on that is killing our country's ability to be more innovative and create change, because they want to keep the same type of thinking and the same, like the younger generation is not going to wait 50 years in line for their turn when they have something to contribute now. So, I think that whole trajectory about development of our next leaders in the country is important. For Vice President Harris, who will become President Harris, to have an opportunity economy means we have to think different about the type of people that we want to have in leadership positions, A, and B, develop succession in a way that is more rapid and removes career politicians who stay in their seats for 50 years. Like that's just not,
Right.
it's just not the future. I loved how, and I want to get to Adam Kinzinger here in a second. I loved when Hillary Clinton, oh my God, when she said the future is now, like we are here now.
Right.
And, you know, I use some data in my business. I use a book, I've referenced it a few times, Brown is the New White. It talks a lot about political power in this country and the fact that by 2032, you know, we have 23% brown and black, and then 28% progressive white, which gives the voting power. And so 2032 is just, it's here
Right
now.
around the corner.
Here. So if you're any business preparing for it, it's now. We're here now. So what are the things we need to be doing now in preparation for that, where we don't have to have a crisis and demand that the person who's running for the next seat step aside in order? We should be developing the right talent and people to lead us. Yeah. What you think about, you know, did you hear Kinzinger's part where he welcomed the Republicans into, you know, God, I found that to be a powerful talk, right?
We have to take advantage of those folks. There are a significant number of powerful people who have voted Republican their entire lives who are never Trumpers. And we have to take advantage and pull them into the fold. And they may not become Democrats, but I think their voices are really critical. I think there's two parts to this campaign. It's the pro moving forward, like here is our policy as Democrats, and then there's the anti-Trump part of the campaign. And I think getting people like him up on stages to clearly communicate, here's why a Harris-Walz ticket is just better for us as America. I think that is really a critical piece of the campaign strategy, or it has to be.
Yep. I questioned when listening to him whether call it the purple party comes as a result of this, right? The combination of red and blue, and whether things will ever go back in either party, right?
Yeah.
The Democrats are evolving right now, and hopefully stays, you know, now that we're removing some of the elder thinking. I just wonder if we're opening up a new, I don't want to say party, but a new system where, you know, I think people are fatigued of the divisiveness and the us versus them. And, you know, I can see myself in Kinzinger, like I could see myself in, you know, there are some views that I've historically had that would be considered Republican views.
Right.
But they are, you know, particularly things like education. I mean, there are just certain things that we all can kind of have a foot in different camps about how we feel about it. And so what are the implications for that for politics going forward is going to be fascinating to watch how it begins to evolve once we have a new, younger woman right running things.
I mean, I really think I'm hearing this more and more kind of as I'm on social media and as I travel the country. I grew up in a social democracy where I think the Netherlands has something like 12 or 13 parties that are in power right now. And so that was my norm, is having this coalition of parties having to work towards things. And that to me makes so much more sense. We will need to have some sort of a constitutional convention to change how we do things, but I think there's an appetite for something like that now in ways that there have not been in my last 34 years in the United States. People have not had as clear an appetite for more choices as I've seen in the last 8 years. And so I think what I'm seeing is a number of people in, you know, I'm not a political scientist, but what I've heard from folks in that world is independents need to run people at the local level and really build a base to be able to show that third parties can win elections. It's not going to happen at the top of the ticket right away. So a third party candidate is not going to win in this country right now. But I think there is appetite for a third and fourth parties.
Mhm.
And so I think
And maybe it's not a I mean, maybe it's not a third party. This is just random thinking out loud here. Maybe it's not a third party, but maybe it's, the purple party becomes the party, right? So,
mm,
right, the predominant party that is,
hmm
for the people by the people, right? Like who and
yeah,
so, again, when I challenge what is so far left and what like we are all of us are not dissimilar. Like,
hmm
um, what is the term from the center out? Like when you govern from the center out, I think, um, I think reasonable people manage that way, right? Leaders
right,
manage from the center out in any organization that you're in. You can't be too far, one way. So I just kind of wonder if there's just a
mm,
a new way of,
right,
um, that will come as a result of all of this. And so an opportunity economy could imply that, there are certain values that the Purple Party carries with them going forward that includes, some of the, I've never been a Republican, so I don't know the difference, if you will. I just knew there was a lot of fiscal difference in terms of how we spent money and
right,
all that sort of stuff, but they've also been the most ineffective party when it comes to making change and our economy. All of those things have been historically great under Democrats. And so, but although not touted that way, right? Touted that Democrats are just heavy spenders and not.
hmm
So it's going to be fascinating to watch what begins to unfold now. And again, 30 days ago, you and I wouldn't even be having this
no,
conversation, right?
no,
Like,
you're right, you're right. The
right?
other
Like,
thing that I think about, and I shared this on TikTok too the other day. The Republican platform has been so much, and you and I can appreciate this because we're Jesus girls, but it has been so heavily focused on pro-life and the way that Republicans interpret that. And so I often talk about it as pro or anti-abortion and pro-birth, but not. I've never voted Republican at the top of the ticket because for me, life is about so much more than
mhm,
the birthing of children. And so for me, I could never support just a pro abortion message. It had to be thinking about how are we supporting women while they're pregnant and then after they deliver, and how are
right.
we investing in education and healthcare and housing and all the things. What is so interesting that I think the Democratic Party needs to do a better job of messaging is right now the Republicans have taken abortion off their ticket. It's not on their platform anymore. And that happened in the RNC is it was no longer on their platform. And so for those who have voted for the Republican ticket purely based on it is the anti-abortion ticket, it's the pro-life ticket, that is not true anymore. That's not true since Roe v. Wade ended. Republicans have realized that they pissed a bunch of people off with that. And as much as they were chasing after that dog, now that they caught the dog, we've actually had more abortion in the last year
Mhm,
than prior. And
mhm,
so I would invite those who have voted Republican for that reason to now look at a party that is wanting to invest in healthcare and housing and education and all the things that do ensure that everyone is able to thrive. And you may not agree in the abortion pill, but I would encourage anyone who's been a Republican to really look at all the other ways that the Democratic Party. And here's the other thing that I would say, having watched most of the speeches on most days, there was a faith element to this DNC as well. That was there was a through line of faith and people talking about their faith and so to say again that the Republican Party is the party of Christianity, I think is really false. It's flawed. Um, I think what the Republican Party represents right now is anti-Christian. Um, I know people in the Republican Party are Christian, but what the party represents, what the national platform and the people on stages represent, is not a Christianity that I recognize. But what I saw on stages at the DNC man, there was so much Jesus in there. There was so much faith woven through different speeches and just how people showed up to one another.
Agreed. And, I think one of the most powerful takeaways about that, again, I remember when I ran, I think I've told the story on air before when the night before my election, I remember answering the phone at 10 o'clock at night, and there were people who had read some comments that I had or something on my website, that they that they interpreted that, oh, she's somebody of faith. And so they were dancing around the question. And I said, are you trying to ask me, am I pro-choice? And they said, yes, that's what we're trying to ask you. And I said, yes, and so, the thing is, and not just in religion or faith, but in any leadership, if you have to tell people that I'm a Christian, or you have to tell people I'm important, or then there's a problem to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Because what the DNC did is, it was just, to your point, it was woven into everything, right? When you care about someone actually quoted it. It might have been Senator what's his name?
Warnock.
Warnock, yeah.
Yeah.
When you care about your neighbor, I mean, wasn't that a heavy theme about caring about your neighbor and making sure that, as Oprah said, that when the house is burning down, you're not trying to check on, see what religion they are, what color they are. You're going to get the cat out of there too. Like, that's what people of faith do, is they behave in a way, their actions. What is it? I can't hear what you say about Christianity because your feet are saying something completely different. And so that, holding the Bible instead of actually reading it, you know, those are the kind of things that I think will help bring people to faith, to understand, and particularly in Black culture. I mean, it's a huge part of all of our lives. And
Right.
yeah. And so we don't have to look like how many people have I heard, they were like, they've judged me personally because I have a bad mouth. And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything to do with, I care about my neighbor. I care about the person next to me, who happens to have, who happens to use a few choice words, as does Vice President Harris. I cracked up because her favorite cuss word is mine also. So I found that to be interesting too. But I mean, we're just human beings, right? And so, but we're out here caring about other people. And so just to listen to, or to see all of that this entire week was unbelievably beautiful. And for the faith community who has intentionally chosen to not be political, is, from my perspective, such a huge lost opportunity of bringing people towards God. Because if you're more worried about the collection plate than you are about who's collected, then there's a huge problem there. So
yeah, we have an opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus in our work. And I tell people that all the time. I don't have to walk around saying Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. I get to be the hands and feet, and I get to serve people and connected to that. The other thing that really struck me, and I didn't catch it right away, but someone did a little montage on the second day, and then I paid attention the rest of the week. And I don't know if this was by intention, but how people talked about their partners and their children. I mean, every opportunity to see, whether it was the Obamas, or it was Joe and Jill Biden, or it was Kamala and Emhoff. I mean, all of the Walls and Gwen. I mean, it just, all of the ways that those partnerships were really celebrated, and that people and their children were really celebrated. And so, again, to say that the Republican Party is the party of life and family, what I think the Democrats did, though, and I really believe it was by intention, is to say, we are actually the party of family. And we're going to show you these really beautiful families. We're going to show you families loving each other. And we actually don't have to, it doesn't have to be orchestrated. Our families actually do love each other. And it was funny. I was watching a little the scene at the RNC where Melania Trump comes up to be on stage with Trump, and you can tell she just is so uncomfortable even near him, and she won't kiss it. He tries to kiss her on the cheek, and she just whispers something in his ear, and then steps to the side, and he tries to grab her hand, and she won't take his. And I think about that, and then watching all of the couples that I saw on stage over the last 4 days and how they just love each other. Watching the Obamas, oh my gosh, it was just so beautiful to watch.
What did
Um,
Michelle say? You don't get to monopolize what it means to be an American. And it's the same thing about a family. You don't get to monopolize and try to tell people what a family actually is.
mhm.
We all have our families that may not be blood,
Right? Yes,
right? Right. And so
yes.
that to your point, trying to portray something that is fake anyhow, when I saw that Melania um, pull her hand away or not want to have anything to do with
Mhm.
him. And, if that's what you're touting as a wonderful family, is somebody who can't stand you, then so be it. But the rest of us want to be surrounded by people that love us and that
Yes.
we love. And, um, my strongest part of my family doesn't, I mean, I have sisters like you who are not
Mhm.
by blood, but by,
Yeah,
through, through God or through the connections of faith. And
yeah.
yeah, those are so important. Well, I was just really excited to be able to talk about this today. I think we have a lot that we're going to get to share and explore and talk about going forward, about what it's going to mean now. First off, to get Vice President Harris in
Mhm.
office. Are you planning on going back for the inauguration? Have you thought about heading to DC?
Probably not. I mean, I thought about that with Obama. I
Mhm.
My schedule's just so crazy busy, and that is November is really busy season.
January, I meant.
I mean, sorry, what am I
Yeah,
thinking? January is my busy
yeah,
season because it's MLK month and
yeah. That's
school's back in session. So as much as I would love to, I also as much as I love people, I'm not a big crowd person. I
yeah, I
don't
know.
like being in big crowds, and as much as I'm on airplanes, the last thing I want to be in one of those DC airports with a million people. So I mean, it'd be awesome to be there. Part of me
Yeah.
would really love, but
I
another
might
part of
try,
me,
I had totally regretted that I missed Obama's, but
hmm
I mean, I just feel really blessed to be living in a time that I get to see
yes,
both an Obama and hopefully Vice President Harris become the president. And so, so I'm hoping that, to your point, I don't know that I can be around the crowds either, and I don't.
yeah,
You're right, but just thinking about it, I know a
yeah,
friend of mine has a house there already and is inviting many people to come if they want to come back. So
wow,
it's just been on
yeah.
my
I have to think about
agenda.
it, but it is literally my busiest season of the year.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I can make that happen.
Yeah. Well, it will be good to continue. I've got my eye on a lot of the things that she is talking about. And
hmm
so, my spirit was rejuvenated listening
Yes.
to her talk. And I feel like my work isn't done. I have been actually thinking about just how tired I am of doing this work for when it doesn't seem to be, moving along. And then like overnight, I'm like, oh, I'm back in, right, with 2 feet,
Ready.
right? I'm back in with 2 feet. What is it I need to do next? So anyhow, final thoughts, Aaron. It's early for us to be on. I appreciate it. I just wanted to do a debrief. I'll be looking forward to hearing a lot of the commentary today from some of the different. I want to hear from Abby Phillip and Laura Coates, like some of them, what the experience was like for them there too. So I can't wait to hear
Mhm.
those. Any final thoughts before we sign off this morning?
So I think I want to share an exchange that I had with my mother last night. My mother is an 80-year-old northern Minnesota white lady who is I call her a rabid Democrat. Like, don't mess with her Democrats. She is super Democrat. But I know as she watches Kamala run, she sees me. And so she texted me last night and she said, it's just such a contrast between the two pairs of candidates and the Democrats are making the most of it. Joy versus anger. And I said, yes, hope versus fear, division versus unity. And it's palpable. That hope is palpable. That joy is palpable. The love of people is palpable. And so I hope that we can get out there and do the work to make this happen. And let's hold her accountable and support her. I think the last thing that I would say is we elevate people like us into positions and then don't support them. And once they get to that position, we don't support them and then critique them when they don't do what we want them to do. And so my encouragement to everyone is, okay, let's lift her, let's help lift her, and then let's make sure that we're also supporting her in all the ways that we can wherever we are, so that she is able to do the work. And part of that means, y'all, you need to vote down ballot. So she cannot do her work if we don't have people in Congress and in our legislatures that can support the work she wants to do. So a lot of people don't really understand how the executive role works. And so I want to encourage everybody watching, please vote all the way down your ballot for other people who will support Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, because they cannot do this work on their own.
Agreed. Powerful words, Erin. I want to echo that as well. I want to add to your thoughts that, you know, if you are a person who is sitting in a legislative district and you don't want to be honest with yourself that you are actually a gatekeeper and you are getting in the way of progress, I'm going to encourage people to start taking a deeper look at themselves and what they want to have for themselves, and recognize where your own personal limits are, because we have to be able to bring this person in or that person in order to help drive that change for us. And so, you know, those are my words today, is like, get out the way so that we can move things forward. That has, the local politics are where the power is, a lot of the power, and we've got to get people into the seats, to your point, Erin. For her to do her job means that we have to occupy some of these other seats that we need so that she has the power to do it. We can't do that while we play politics as usual. It's time to, you know, sacrifice, step aside. Let's start bringing in some different people and helping them to get themselves elected and into places. I also wanted to do a shout out to Shasti Conrad. I saw her a few times on air. She's the chair of the Washington Democrats. I was really happy and proud to see her too. She is a young woman who is doing a lot. We need to help her, right? Let's help her be successful. To your point, we don't stand and quarterback people. We give them a system and support to make them successful. So thank you all for joining us this evening, or this morning. I always say this evening because we're normally on in the evening, but thank you for being on with us this morning. We look forward to continuing this for the next foreseeable future, and for the next 74 days. Let's all hands on deck. So thank you for joining us this morning.
Half that up in sacks, I favor black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody.